Okay, so this is my review of Servant Season 2, Episode 4, 2. This is written by the showrunner and creator Tony Baskalop and directed by the one and only M. Night Shyamalan. So just seeing that open the episode, that's the two that are helming this episode, you knew you were in for something crazy. And what I like about M. Night doing this episode is he switches things up with shows where the biggest director on the series isn't just doing the first episode or the last episode. He's doing one right in the middle, and it's impactful because then he can handle something as crazy as this episode that falls into the middle of a season. So I really like that. So all of a sudden you see how great this episode starts because Leanne now is back in the Turner house. And it has such a payoff because the first three, she's not with us in the Turner household, and having her back now has more impact. It has more significance. It feels fresh, but she's in a different environment, not just in her bedroom. Dorothy has put her in the attic. This episode is like everything hitting the fan the show has brilliantly set up. And it also is exposing the reversals of characters we have now. Again, if you go back and watch season 1, you're seeing how unlikable in the beginning Sean was and how likable Dorothy was. You're flipping it now because Dorothy, this is her most awful episode. She is becoming a monster. This is the most unlikable she has presented herself to everyone around her and to the audience. This is also, on the flip hand, the most likable Sean's come off, and where you sympathize with Sean the most in this episode, more than anybody. And also, that third tier of it is that in the beginning, you thought Leanne's intentions were usually bad. We knew she gave Sean this loss of sense and taste, and that, oh, is she some like witchy poo character? But you also really like Leanne in this episode, and you see different perspectives. Dorothy's literally like to Leanne, you're staying here till you remember and tell me where Jericho is. And this is the direct opposite approach Sean wants to take with Leanne, where Dorothy's going full military here. She's gonna like torture it out of her. But Sean wants to do the right way, which is work with Leanne, give her things she likes, and get it out of her that way. But you see in the beginning, Dorothy proclaims to Sean like, oh, this is just a girl, poor girl that was raised by a cult. It's all she knows. So she's taken as like almost like an intervention you would do for, like, she's saying, a heroin addict, and snapping her out of it and thinking this tough approach will do just that. And it's the complete opposite effect. It does not work on someone like Leanne. And this is also important because it's kind of Dorothy's justification for her behavior. Like, oh, she's just a girl and I'm, in a sense, helping her get out of her brainwashing from this cult. But what makes this episode so effective and on the edge of your seat is that she doesn't want Sean going up there. And she's like, you're not going up there. You're too weak, and Leanne will manipulate you. And it's exciting to see Sean now, like, finding the keys, finding a way up there. I also am a big fan of the scenes with Julian and Sean together bickering about something crazy Dorothy's doing. I don't know why I find it so humorous. It's always great. But like I always say, Sean and Julian's scenes are important because you really can get into Sean's head and where he's at a given state, but how different he reacts to Julian than the Sean we knew at the beginning of the show to now, where he's constantly now disagreeing with Julian. And why a tense episode like this really is a masterclass of how to do something suspenseful but keep people hooked is it's making the character moments the most important while adding these intense sequences and revealing more information. But it also manages to squeeze in a little levity and humor. I take that as when they show the clips of Dorothy doing her news coverage, because this woman kidnapped somebody, torturing her, doing awful things this episode, but she's still going to work. She's virtual skydiving. Lauren Ambrose does a great job at like how she presents Dorothy on the news. And she's like this corny news anchor that's so passionate about her job. It's really her number one thing. And then we get this incident she's covering where there's a fight over chicken at a grocery store, which was great. But my favorite shot yet of this series appeared in this episode. It's no surprise because M. Night's the one directing here. M. Night is filthy with the camera, whether you like him as a director or not, whether you like him as a writer. You cannot deny he's one of the best directors with a visual eye that comes across through his cinematographer. And you always know when it has an M. Night touch because he's able to get such unique shots that have meaning, but they're different than what you usually see, and there's a lot of thought into it. And what I thought was one of the best shots here was when Leanne is in the attic with Dorothy, and the shot is shown as a reflection through this vintage mirror, and the way that Leanne is half in a shadow here, to me showing again, this character of Leanne is half in the light, and there's this other part of her we're learning, this like witchcraft side of her that would be in the dark, and then Dorothy's behind her, and in the background is that creepy mannequin watching their conversation. And we really clearly get Leanne's point of view in this episode, because she's saying this Marino family is sick and she's there to help them. So this is a common trait of the character of Leanne, and makes more sense why she came to the Turners and was, in a sense, trying to help Dorothy by however she got this baby in the house to help her, and she's doing it with this Marino family. And it also clearly reinstates that no matter what, Leanne's hard goal here is to not let Dorothy near this baby. She does not trust Dorothy. And that's the main conflict that's really working well in this season, is Leanne doesn't want the baby near Dorothy, and Dorothy will do anything to get that baby back. And we're talking about effective reversals. Look at the position of Dorothy and Sean in this situation, where Sean is constantly suggesting to Dorothy, can't we just let Leanne use the bathroom? Can't she come down in the evenings? This is, again, the complete different stances they would take last season about Leanne. Also, Sean is a believer now. Dorothy is a complete skeptic. Sean also likes Leanne now. Dorothy completely hates her. Again, all reversals. And I love how Julian throws this dig at Sean during one of the dinner sequences here, bringing up to Dorothy that he went on his knees to the uncle, and really throws him under the bus. But it is such an important line in showing you and reinserting where we look at Sean and how he is compared to the ultimate skeptic in Julian, and now Dorothy, who's gone more towards how Julian thinks. But all of this isn't even the craziest base of this episode. What's really keeping it all together and making you completely in awe is going back to the title here of 2, where it's really meaning 2 a.m. And this now, Dorothy says she feels it in her body, that something her mind forgot. And we see sequences at 2, she's taking out this trauma she's feeling in her soul, basically, on Leanne. And this is the most awful, like I've said, we've seen of Dorothy. And I think it's also alluding to a theme of this show where when you don't deal with your trauma, you take it out on others, and it goes to the mistake they're kind of showing with Sean and Julian lying to her about what happened, and the mistake that she's just not dealing with it. And it's that sense of hurt people. And you see, she literally twists her arm in the first incident. And I love how Leanne's just so, like, sometimes innocent looking like a kid, where she's, like, hiding behind the mannequin when Dorothy comes up again. Eventually, she builds a fort around her bed the second time Dorothy comes after an incident. And there's a big line here. Dorothy says to her, "You won't come between Sean and I. We are a family." Something you clearly never had. What a dig by Dorothy, but also important foreshadowing. This clearly, at the end of the episode, you'll see is where this is going to go now in season 2, that we are going to get the root cause of a divide between Dorothy and Sean is going to be Leanne, how they treat her differently. I love, too, when Sean finds the key and he goes upstairs for his first visit with Leanne. He's like, "Oh, you found Angela," talking about the mannequin. She's like, "I'd call her Mrs. Barrington." I don't know why I laughed at that, but it's such a Leanne thing to do. But there's some really excellent writing by Tony Bascalot, per usual, because all of these lines are creating conflict, but also giving us more information into our characters' heads. Like, Leanne's like, "Why haven't you told her?" And Sean's like, "You don't know what it would do to her. And yes, you want to punish her, sure, but no one would punish her more if she found out than herself." Again, making this such a complicated situation. Like I said, in episode 1, they developed sympathy for what Julian and Sean decided to do to lie to her, because she was saying she'd kill herself. So it's like, what do you do? It's really interesting. Yeah, you're afraid of telling Dorothy what really happened because of what she'll possibly do, and like she threatened to kill herself in episode 1 if she ever lost her kid. But you're also seeing the effects now. If you don't tell her, and if she finds out on her own, that now it's just gonna be an explosion. But a couple little things that sneak in here that are very important is that when Sean lets Leanne use the bathroom, Leanne looks down at some items that look like they're Dorothy's in the bathroom. She's definitely taking something to do some voodoo on her. You know Dorothy's going to be her target now. But it was also really huge that Sean put that Bible on Leanne's bed in the attic. This is when she gained her trust and like of Sean. And it was such a smart move compared to what Dorothy was doing to get trust of Leanne and answers. And it's also, I believe, a curiosity Sean has, that he already saw the passage with his name in it on the leprosy section in the Bible, and that he might also be testing Leanne, like, can she reverse this now if I give her this? But I love in this one sequence when Dorothy actually goes up, she pulls Leanne by the hair off the bed. This is one of the most visually disturbing things we've seen yet in this show, and this whole episode general feel one of the most horrific vibes we've seen yet. And I really almost feel for Lauren Ambrose here, because she's giving 150% to this role. But it's got to be such a dark place to be. It's scary because it's so disturbing watching her in this manic state doing what she's doing, and you got to feel for the actress in a sense. Like, man, I cannot believe what state of mind she's in on set. And they reiterate too, when Sean's talking to Leanne here, that complication of Dorothy's mindset about just having a child, but also being super career focused. And he says, we didn't start trying till 30. It would have been career suicide anytime earlier. So Dorothy's always weighing pros and cons of having a child and how could it affect her precious career she has. But you see, Sean's like, don't play games to Leanne. I just want him back. I know you're a good person. I know what you did for us. So this, again, is some of the most likable moments for Sean here. You sympathize with him because he just wants that feeling of a child back. He's still grieving the loss of the original Jericho, and he's treating Leanne nicely and is understanding where she was coming from originally. But she says, Jericho died, Mr. Turner. So is it to the theory of she's reviving this doll? Or is it just a separate baby like she's alluding to that is with better people, she's saying now, and they're taking care of it? We still don't really know yet. And another great line in this jam-packed episode is Julian saying to Sean, we're not the bad guys here. And Sean's like, no, what are we? And Julian says, the victims. Isn't that obvious? But this is what makes the show so great. That line right there sums up the conflict of the audience that we have, where we're constantly switching back and forth between who we think is the victims here and who are the bad guys. And this is an episode where clearly Dorothy Turner is a pure villain right now, and that you're sympathizing with Leanne and Sean. But it wasn't always the case, and it does change a lot in the show, which I really think makes it so riveting. And I'm sure we're going to have back and forth moments where all of a sudden you're feeling for Dorothy again, and then you're hating Leanne, and vice versa. So that's something that I applaud the show and really does well. But what's awesome is Leanne opens this Bible back at the test of leprosy section, and where she wrote Sean's name, and she reverses the curse, and he can feel again. He can taste again. And again, I really wonder if Sean has had his suspicions that she caused that, and that's why he put the Bible there too, and is maybe connecting the dots now, that because he's had a good relationship with Leanne, she has now cured him. We will see, though, that will probably come to light the next episode, exactly how much he knows. Also interesting to note, there was a 2 a.m. incident of Dorothy and Leanne. We did not actually see what happened. We saw her run up the steps, we heard a sound, she comes back down. I'm sure that's going to mean something later on. So it's a nice little drop of mystery here. And this is an episode we did get a lot of answers. So a lot of shows like this, people complain there's just more questions. But no, there was a nice little balance of answering a lot of questions in this episode, learning more about our characters, moving the plot forward, but dropping still little things that might come back. That also is shown when Sean is eating with Leanne. There's a moment he says to her, if Dorothy sees you have that, meaning the Bible, that's going to come back too, because I think that Dorothy will find that Bible, and that's going to be the thing that makes her snap at Sean and connects, how did you get this? Especially because that Bible symbolizes more now too, because it again is in that believer section that now Dorothy's fully not on that train. She even says in this episode, no superstitions in this house. So this is where we see the best horror sequence yet in this show. Feels like something out of a Halloween movie, where Leanne fools Dorothy by putting the mannequin in the bed, hits her in the back of the head with the metronome, but then when Leanne's running to open the door to get out, this was so exciting, and I was screaming watching it, because Dorothy's coming out of focus, into focus, coming from afar down the hallway towards her, and this really shows her as this monster this episode, like a Freddy or a Jason or a Michael Myers. It's that same effect, and she hits her in the back of the head with the metronome to get back at Leanne, and it was such brilliant writing by Tony Bascalop to reveal why Sean would wake up there. What's the justification for us to buy it? And it's that he gets his feeling back. And what's so important about that is actually Leanne doing a good thing by healing him of his curse is what saved her in the end, because it led to Sean finding her buried in the dirt by Dorothy. And such important blocking of characters here by M. Night, because you see Sean is holding Leanne when he takes her out of the dirt like his child he's caring for. And Dorothy's looking down at them and says, nothing is too far, meaning where you can go crossing a line. It just beautifully sets the stage visually of where everyone is right now, our main characters. And you could have ended the episode here and it would have been amazing. But to top it all off, we get this ginormous moment where Dorothy wakes up. It has happened. It all connects now, what she found at 2 a.m. And that's when, in the original incident with leaving her baby in the car, that is when it all connected to her. Oh my God, my baby is dead. So it is the best cliffhanger you could do now for this show. I don't think that will ever be topped. This episode for me is a 10. Everything just hits it out of the park. Directing, cinematography, writing, acting. It would take me hours to praise so many good things about this episode. And I really want to say that it's so impressive because it's in a season 2. And I think that comes when you have such a passion clearly shown by the actors and people working behind the scenes. And that M. Night has a vision of this. He's already said he knows the ending, and that's going to be 4 seasons. And that Tony Bascalop's writing so much of it. So it's got a consistent voice in there to making sure nothing gets off the rails. There's clearly a vision behind this. And what makes me sad is that it's on Apple TV Plus, because if this was on Netflix and it was exposed to more people, this would be a mega hit, because it's in a horror genre that's always popular to a mass audience. And if it had the exposure on Netflix and people were binging a show like this, everyone would be talking about it. And unfortunately, it's on one of those services that people aren't really tuning in unless they just bought an Apple product and got a free trial for it. So I just hope it will get more praise and more people will give it a shot, because it is incredible. And it's quickly becoming one of my favorite shows ever. But let me know down below what you thought of this episode. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I read every comment and try to respond to as many as I can. Please subscribe so you don't miss one of my reviews of Servant. I'll be doing every episode. I also review other shows and movies as well, and do celebrity interviews. And if you really like what I do here, I really appreciate if you could sign up for my monthly $2 donation to my channel. That will give me what I need to do this full time and make more videos for you guys. It's my ultimate dream, and I'd be forever grateful to you. And please follow me at Steve Varley Show on Twitter and Instagram for more of me. And I'll see you next time.